Okay. It says I'm live, which is a good start, I think. I've already got some questions. Hello, Sam. Sam, I've seen come across before and ask a few other questions, which is good. Just to talk about a couple of things before the actual 12 o'clock US time. So the stream's officially supposed to start in 3 minutes, but I think there are people waiting, so we may as well start talking about a few things whilst they're waiting. First of all, I'm sitting in a room with my dogs, and the area I live in, people walk past our window very often with their dogs, and also there's kind of maintenance people walking around and things like that as well. So I apologise in advance if my dogs make their famous appearance on the stream by barking at things. I will try and endeavour to shut them out or tell them to be quiet. My terrier is a little bit insane and thinks that he's a German Shepherd in disguise, so he likes to go and bark at people like his life depends on it. I think he's very protective, but extremely noisy. So if my dogs do start barking, I will shut them up. But I apologise in advance. This is a live stream, and anything can happen. It's been very gratifying, I have to say, to be involved in the Embarcadero Academy boot camp. There's been a lot of people email me directly, and quite a lot of people comment on the courses and things like that. The two courses that I did week 3, which was mobile development, and week 8, which is the one that we're live streaming for now, seems to have attracted quite a few people. I've had some very positive comments and actually very few negative comments. In fact, I can't remember one where someone said, "This was rubbish, why did you bother?" So apparently I'm not doing trash, which is a good thing. It's always good for the ego. Like any other programmer, you always think there's an off chance that you're probably doing something completely stupid. The stream today, you can ask any questions you like. I probably won't know all the answers. In fact, I'd very definitely say I won't know all the answers because I am just a normal mortal. I keep telling people all along. Anybody that is watching this stream and hasn't taken part in the Embarcadero Academy live stream, if you go to embarcaderoacademy.com and click on the Delphi CE Bootcamp, that's what this stream is part of. I'm part of week 8, and I'll explain who I am in a second. For those of you that don't know, there may be some people that are sort of joining the stream on the off chance, because you appear in various YouTube bits and bobs saying, "Oh, there's a guy streaming," and people join along and have no idea who I am. My name is Ian Barker. For those of you that don't know, I am a Embarcadero MVP for Delphi, the programming language. Embarcadero MVP doesn't mean that I'm an employee of Embarcadero. I'm definitely not that. I'm self-employed. I work for myself. I write software for a number of people, mostly in the UK. Even though I have a British accent, I'm actually based in Dallas, in Texas. And I've lived here for 10 years now. So you would think I'd pronounce Delphi, but I'm afraid I can't get used to that. I'm still going to call it Delphi. This stream is to specifically discuss week 8, which is about an introduction to component building. Sorry, not component building, but using third-party components. One of the strengths of Delphi is the fact that you can build applications very quickly by utilizing third-party components, and that means things that have been made by someone else. That's a nice little chunk of code that you can just drop on your application, and it makes it do all sorts of exciting things that perhaps you didn't have the ability to write yourself, or it did something that would have taken a long time to develop, and usually for free or for not a massive amount of money, depending on what component you pick. You can get these components and add all sorts of wow and vim and vigor to your programs with just a couple of drop-in components. Very great language. I've used it since the first day it came out, which is 20 odd years now, and I still by choice use it every single day, and so do many of my colleagues, even though most of us can write in other languages like C# and some of the more fashionable languages. I'm not doing Haskell or anything like that, or Go or R, which I don't understand even. I'm sure I should have done some advanced extra degree and then I would have understood what R's for, but it looks cool, but it's not my language. So I see from the count there's a few people come along and watch. If you've got any questions, if you go to the right hand side of the screen, there's a chat window and you can ask questions. There is a profanity filter on and things like that. And if you do type too many things that it considers to be profane, then I think you get auto blocked and banned, and Google takes your children and puts them into the streets or something. So just be careful. You can't post any links as far as I'm aware, but I'll post any links that you do need to get to. Some of the questions I've been asked, one of them was from a guy called Mike, and I'm afraid I've forgotten Mike's surname. I suppose I should really have brought it up, but Mike knows who he is. I've already replied to him. He asked some questions about on the comment section on the course about creating some simple components. The course itself is about using components rather. Oh, there he is. Hello, Mike. Mike Z. Zune or something, I think your name was. But hi, Mike. There are some links, and Mike, I'm actually going to email you directly the links because what I think I will do is just create a simple component for you. I'm not going to Mike Zamuda. Is that how you pronounce it? Zamuda? Zamuda. Okay. I'm not going to do it on this stream right now because it'll take a little while to do, and most people will just be a little bit bored just watching me typing some fairly random code. But what you've asked for isn't difficult, but it's also not that straightforward because you have to take part in some events. The question that Mike asked for the others of you was about creating a third-party component that would be something like a label control, and when a certain property on the label control was set to a value, then it would show some text incorporating that value, and when the property wasn't set, then it would just show a default amount of text. So let's say, for example, the property was called your name, and you set your name to be Ian. The label control will then say hello Ian, and the example that Mike gave was if it was set to empty, if the property saying my name or your name was blank, then it would say hello world instead of hello Ian. So fairly simple idea. I know he obviously wants to expand on that, but there are some articles that tell you how to do these kind of things. And I'll send those. I'll put those links on your question, Mike. And when I've done the component source, I'll actually put the source code for that on that link as well on the course, so that everybody can benefit from it. Creating components isn't difficult. It got more difficult when FireMonkey came out, and also the later versions of Mike actually says, actually, I was wondering more so how to create a component or adapt a component for future reuse. Okay, yeah. Well, but actually, ironically, the thing about component is it's absolutely designed for reuse by definition. So you can create base classes and then have your components sort of use those base classes. But really, if you think about what component is, it is a base class in itself, and you can then inherit properties and create properties from there. There are also some things like class helpers and stuff like that that you can use in later versions of Delphi that will allow you to override certain properties of classes and things like that without actually even creating a component. But I think you're really talking about reuse by creating a component and then dropping it on form or something like that, and then maybe later on in a different program doing something else and using a different version of that component. You can, once you've added it to your palette, which I think I can get up on the screen here. Let me just play around with my screen for a second. I've got to work out which it is. Control Alt 5. I think you should be able to see my screen right now. Let me just check my stream thing. Should be coming up any moment now. Yeah. Okay. So you should be able to see my screen. When you say create a component, a new component, you actually pick the ancestor class for the component anyway. So once your component is installed, your own component, it would actually appear in this list. So if you had a component called my component, if you want to create a new component, a completely new component, but based on your old component, then you would pick your component from there and off it would go. It would actually inherit everything from that old component. That might not be what you're talking about. I suspect you're talking about a kind of batch of components that are a little bit more polymorphic than just inheriting one particular component. You can use interfaces on components and stuff like that as well. So I'll create a component, an example component, and then we'll talk about that a little bit later. So what next? Let me go back to my questions. Pete Edwards. Hello, Peter. Peter is someone who I've actually written code for in the past back in the UK. Hello, Peter. He actually commented a while ago, I can't believe you're still doing Delphi stuff. Oh, my word, or something like that. He bumped into me on the course, yes. Pete runs a very interesting company. I wrote all sorts of little graphic manipulation programs, I think, for him and stuff like that. Can't remember all of it. And Embarcadero Academy have joined in the chat as well, saying, welcome, please post your questions for Ian here in the chat. Thank you. That's probably Mike, I imagine, from Embarcadero. Right, what was the other question I had? Let's go back to here. Oh, yes, Sam. Okay, Sam asked a question kind of before the stream started, but I want to cover that anyway. He said, are there any good editor plugins so that he wants to make the Delphi IDE behave like Vim? And he got partially offended when I said, please make my IDE behave like Vim, and said, I've never heard anybody ask this before. I'm joking. I have heard people say, I really love Vim and all the rest of it. Yes, some people love Vim and some people don't. I should explain, I've been a programmer for 30 odd years, and I started out in the Unix world. I used to write COBOL programs, and I used to write system programs for Unix in C back in the 80s, and worked at the system level, kernel level on Unix programs. And we used to use Vi as our main editors, and Ed, which was the Unix editor. And the old joke about Vi is that once it's a bit like Hotel California. Once you're in, you can check out any time you like, but you can never leave. And that's the problem with Vim as well, that people always go, I don't know how to exit Vim. And if you've never used Vim, you will have no idea what I'm talking about. But if you have, you will feel the pain of most newbies when they get stuck in Vim and can't get out. Vim is a text editor. It's very popular for some types of programmers. A lot of C# programmers I know, for example, use Vim and swear by it. After I moved from Unix onto other types of applications, I started writing DOS applications and wrote some antivirus stuff for a while and things like that. I was very pleased to walk away from Vi and Vim and all the others, but I don't know why people want to do it, but anyway, I'm getting slightly sidetracked. The way to make Delphi act like it is Vim, if you really are a masochist, is you can use key mappings in Delphi. And if I just go back to my screen, I can show you. You should be able to see my screen in a moment. There are tool mappings that you can get, key mapping, sorry, that you can get. And when my poor machine is struggling at the moment, hopefully I'm not going to crash it. Come on, computer. There are key bindings in here, and also different types of coloring. There are some add-ons for Delphi that will change your IDE colors. I have the basic IDE colors. I can't remember if in the stream I spoke about the different IDE add-ons, but I can make this whole IDE color in a different way completely. And I quite often develop in what's known as dark mode. Those of you that have used dark mode, not the dark side, but the dark mode, will understand that it changes all these this chrome, that you see on the screen here. It changes it to a black color, and your editor background is changed to different colors as well, depending on what you've got installed. But if you wanted to have some key bindings, then you can go into here and create your own key bindings. I would be very surprised if there wasn't a Vim binding available somewhere for Delphi, and that someone's already done it, because it's the kind of thing that people do. I don't think that there is anything on Getit. If anybody knows of some key bindings for Vim for Delphi, and they want to email me or message me, or if they can point us in the right direction on the there's no bindings there. If they want to point us to the right direction in the comments, then I'll gladly do that. If you post a link and it gets blocked, just email me directly. My email, as you saw on the front of the screen, is ian.barker@gmail.com. So Vim, I'm sure there are some. The other alternative is, and this is kind of not really Embarcadero approved, I'm guessing, is that you can use Visual Studio Code, which does have a set of Vim bindings, and there is a Delphi parser that will parse Delphi code in Visual Studio Code. The downside of that is that you are not using the IDE and getting the benefits of the IDE, and I would strongly suggest that you do use the IDE, particularly for screen designs and things like that. But if you absolutely cannot live with the Delphi editor, there's nothing you can do about it, then go and try looking at a Visual Studio Code and use some of the bindings there. There's Omni Pascal is a Visual Studio Code component that you can add. It will highlight your source code in the same way that you do when you're in the source code editor like this, and give you all sorts of highlighting, coloring. What it won't do is do all the same kind of, it does do completion, but it doesn't do a lot of the other things that the IDE uses. You're better off using Delphi IDE. I could use either. I choose to use the IDE, but I get it. I mean, some people, it's not their thing, and that's fine. That's not a problem. Right, so let me go back to my little comments on the stream and see what else questions we've been asked. Oh, there's loads now. Wow. Bruce H. What is the scope of the questions we can ask? Ask any questions you like. I don't write components mostly. I have written a few. But, Bruce, if you want to, you can ask any questions you like that are relevant to Delphi. I use Bruce. Mike Z says, is it possible to have Delphi on multiple monitors? Absolutely, you can. The reason is that I know this for certain, is I actually use 3 monitors, and not only do I use 3 monitors, but I use hang on just one second. Just one second, my wife is trying to get hold of me. I'm telling her to go away. I use 3 monitors. I use 1 monitor on the left, along there. I use 1 monitor on the right, and then in the middle I have another monitor. Okay, and the middle monitor is portrait. In other words, it's turned on its side. If you look at your normal monitor, the long edge is across the top, and the short edge is going up and down. My middle monitor is turned upwards, so that I have the code in there. Now, actually, as it happens, I'm streaming on a laptop at the moment, so I can't easily show you that. But if I just go back to Delphi, Mike is asking how can we split it up. I'm just going to stream my desktop. The way to do it is, first of all, I actually set my my default layout up so that on my main desktop machine I have my screens arranged. But the way that you can do it is if you go to this desktop speed setting here and choose classic undocked, okay, all of your windows will undock. Okay, now I'm going to choose my one, okay, because I prefer it to be laid out in a particular way, okay. And when you choose undocked, you'll suddenly see that, look, these windows here are no longer joined together. You can undock them manually, you can drag them off, okay, but if you choose undocked, what you can then do is choose these. Let me just move this over here so we can do it. Oh, hang on, I have too many windows open. So go back to Delphi. Where were we? Yeah. You can classic undocked. Yeah, you can now see if you choose classic undocked. See this? Oh look, it's free floating. Oh look, this one goes around wherever you want. Okay. Now what I do is I arrange all of my windows, and you can, you know, no, I don't want to do that actually. Let's choose multi-device preview. Drag that off, and you see that blue box turn up. That means the window's free now. Okay. Now what you do is you drag these onto the monitors you want. So let's say I want my Data Explorer over on the right-hand window, which I won't do right now because I haven't got a right-hand window. This is a laptop. When you've arranged everything like it is, click on here. In fact, click in here and call it my new desktop, or whatever you want to call it. Okay, and then you see this little save button here. Save the current desktop. Sorry, my new desktop. I did it in the wrong place. My new desktop. Okay, and see where it says that there. Now, from now on, whenever you select that from your desktop settings, it will rearrange itself. So if we just go back to the default layout, where everything's docked, boom, like that. You've got your 3 monitors or 2 monitors or however you've got it set. Go to my new desktop, and it remembers where everything was. Pretty cool. I use this all the time. I personally find it quite difficult to develop on a single screen. I prefer multiple screens. I normally have, for example, my code editor window in the central monitor, and I have the object inspector and the project manager docked together here on the right on my left-hand monitor, and I then have the structure window, which you absolutely need when you're doing FireMonkey apps. I have this structure window docked to the left as well. You can, for windows that you can't see, if you just pick the window from there, then you can drag and drop it around and things like that. If you do, when you're working with FireMonkey apps or FireMonkey components in apps, you really do need this structure window displayed, because FireMonkey really relies on this structure for certain properties. Like if you saw Andrea Magni's, I think it was week 2, where he talked about FireMonkey, and he's got a book coming out later on this year as well, which I absolutely recommend. You can do some amazing things in FireMonkey that you cannot do in the VCL. I love the VCL. I mean, who doesn't? We've used it for years and years and years, but FireMonkey is definitely the next level kind of experience that you get with Delphi. And this structure view, it means that you can have a label. I don't think this is a multi-device app. Yes, it is. Oh dear. But I've got what have I got here? Lost all my windows. What am I missing? Control palette. Is that there? No. Okay. If we were to get something like, let's choose a shadow, for example. If I choose a shadow effect, drop it on the screen. If you see at the moment, that is kind of free form. If I actually move that and drop it here onto the shadow, you probably can't see it very well because of the size of the font, but Let me just increase the font size. Everything's in the wrong place. I can't do it, but font size, let's say 32, just so it's bigger. It's not auto sizing either, so we'll just hopefully at the resolution I'm streaming at, you should be able to see there's a shadow there now, and you can go in and you can set the properties for the shadow effect and set different shadow colors. So we could use a red shadow, for example, and something like that. But this structure is window is very important for FireMonkey screen UI development, and really it comes into its own when you've got multi-monitor, because it's very easy to lose these windows. I mean, I like the Object Inspector to be embiggened, made large on the screen, not like this because that would be ridiculous, but at least full length down the screen. And I like my central code editor window, this one, to be also the full length of my portrait screen, so that's quite important to me. Right, I'm going to go back to the questions and see what else we've got. Just 1 second. I'll try to not stream things I shouldn't. How can I split it up? Yeah, I've done that. Clear the embedded designer checkbox and restart Delphi. I don't know what you mean by that. No, you don't need to do that. I think that's the advice that Bruce is giving there. There's nothing wrong with it, but he's saying clear the embedded designer checkbox in options, restart Delphi. You don't need to do that. I've just shown actually how you can actually separate the thing up by choosing the undocked mode and then driving them around and saving it. So Mike says, this is perfect. Thank you. Cool. I'm saving this now, Ian. Thank you too. Good. Well, there, we've taught you something. It wasn't really about components, but it's close. Mike Z says, I heard a rumor, maybe from 10 illustrations of Delphi ago, that you can't use an undocked mode with FireMonkey. No, it's absolutely untrue. I use undocked mode almost exclusively, and nowadays, certainly I'm working on mobile apps. In fact, starting a new mobile app probably Tuesday or Wednesday next week, quite a large set of mobile apps for someone that I work for in the UK. I think we're doing an Android, iOS, and Windows Surface app going into the Android Play Store and the iOS App Store and the Microsoft Store, and that same app is going to work with 2 of our product lines that I work on, and it will all be exclusively written in Delphi, and the same code will be reused in the background as far as possible. So all the business logic about getting data and showing some of the things that we're doing that I can't talk about because this is under NDR, but NDA, sorry. The same app will work for 2 of our main product lines that are completely different. One's a desktop program, or one's a server program. Cloud-based program, and this same app will talk to all of our product line, and will also work on multi-platform. Now, if I was to do this in something like Xamarin, which is obviously technology from Microsoft, I guarantee it would take us 3 times longer, even though I'm competent in C#. But in Delphi, we can reuse a lot of the business logic in the background that we already use for our desktop apps. But we can also target with FireMonkey a phone app and a tablet app with one executable for all of those platforms, which is absolutely amazing. And it's going to look incredible because we're going to use some custom themes, and you'll be able to swap themes as well in the app with a single line of code. Now, I may stream that. I've been asked to do some stuff for Code Rage, which is coming up later this year. And I haven't had a chat with Jim McKeith, who's the chief product evangelist, but I might actually do some multi-device stuff and show how we can do that, target those for a Code Rage stream, because it's kind of cool. And people seem to ask more questions about mobile development than anything else. Bruce H says, I need a really good file encryption component, RSA and symmetric, but I don't want to be locked into buying an upgrade of a commercial product every time a new version of Delphi comes out. Get it has the older lockbox components. Is that stable and will it work? Yes, it is. And will it work? Yes, it will. There is another encryption library, and unfortunately, off the top of my head, I can't think of what it's called. Let me just look for that for 1 second, because funnily enough, I was just looking at encryption libraries for Delphi the other day. Yeah. Oh, MadCrypt. Yeah, that's a little bit out of date. There are some libraries out there called MadCrypt. Do you know what? What I'm going to do is, Bruce, I'll note that down, and I will post on the comments section a link to some file encryption libraries. I do actually use some in our programs at the moment. Because we encrypt our license information. Some of our products they use activation in them, and they also use software licenses that people type in a long number, like the old Windows way of doing things. Although we're going towards activation, and we actually use our own encryption for some of those, and we use some commercially available encryption for others. We are also about to do some. What about DCP Crypt? Don't know that one. I suppose I should, but I don't know it. Hey, everybody who's got an idea, give some suggestions. We'll go through them, and I'll post the links into the comments so that everybody gets to see them. But anyway, we're about to do some encryption that requires an in-place buffer encryption. Yes, free. I like that. Free is exactly the right price. Bear in mind what I did say on the course about components, about using components that are open source, which is fine, but be careful of the license. Free is not the same as free to use anywhere. Free means you don't pay for it, but it could be that it uses types of Mozilla licenses or their own kind of license where it says, if you use this at all, then you must publish how you've used it. More licenses nowadays are good, but they allow you to do whatever you want, including commercial, without releasing the source. But for encryption, one of the benefits of open source is that obviously there are a bunch of people looking at the source code of the encryption and finding holes in it. And it also means that plenty of people who do find a hole in it, or one of their customers more likely finds a hole in it, they put a fix in and that gets contributed towards it. But just be careful of the licenses, because you don't want to get caught up in license disputes. They don't happen very often, but when they do, they can be extremely expensive. Because if your application's out there, our typical user base for our applications is 7 to 10,000 people, customers, not people actually, not users, but 7 to 10,000 different companies using them. And if we mess up, it's a problem. And if we release a version of the products, as we do fairly regularly, when we roll out those products, if there's a fault in them that's a showstopper, like some encryption problem, then it gets hairy. MIT license, very good. Okay, MIT license is one of the ones that's not a problem. In a similar vein, I need SFTP, not FTPS as well. Not found a good open source version. I thought that Indy did SFTP now. Let me note that down, because I was pretty certain that Indy did it. I do know of one for C#, but I'm not sure. Just Indy SFTP. For those that don't know, SFTP is not the same as FTPS, which are both secure forms of file transfer protocol. And most people think they're kind of swappable. Bruce says it only does FTPS as far as I know. I'll check that because I think it does support SFTP, but I could be getting confused because I did work on a C# project a little while ago, and I do remember that it might have been something to do with that. So perhaps I'm misremembering it, but I've noted it down. Do we know of an SFTP component? Let's just do a quick Google check. Let's see, Delphi SFTP. Let's see if we, how to make an S. There is a Stack Overflow question. For SFTP, and someone has asked about SFTP. No, Indeed 10.6.2. Indeed does not use SFTP, so that answers that question. That's on an Embarcadero question. Let's see if there's a Stack Overflow question. Let's see if I can find the answer. Marked as a duplicate. Yep. According to this, Indeed does have an SFTP component to this Stack Overflow article. I'm going to post this link in the chat for you so that you can see what it said. Okay. That's the SFTP link. Silly question. Can we use a MySQL component to access a remote server even if we're using Community Edition? Yes, you can. The components that you would need to use are some of the third-party ones that I showed, which are, if I just go back to my application that I've got here, I can probably show you it. Did I install these DB database things? MySQL. SQL. Yeah. Okay. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to stream that screen for a second so that you can see what I'm talking about. Control AF 5. Right. So if you recall, one of the components that I talked about databases was the MyDAC components, which are here. Now, I happen to, the version that you see on my screen at the moment of Delphi is actually not the Community Edition. I've got, I think this might be the Enterprise Edition or something like that. But nevertheless, these MyDAC components do work in the Community Edition because Community Edition is the binary equivalent of the Professional Edition, as it is called, in the sense that the components that you can use in the Professional Edition, unless the component author is specifically restricted, I'm not aware that they even can, because there's no call that they can call to do that, but any components that work in the Professional Edition will work in the Community Edition, and one of these is this, which is the MyDAC. So you can put a connection component on, you can put a query component or a table component on like that, and then you, I can't remember how to do this, but you connect the connection up. There's like an adapter and all the rest of it, and it will just work. So yes, you absolutely can use MySQL to access in the CE version. As far as I'm aware, there are no restrictions on that. The restrictions that we're normally told about with the Community Edition relate to the amount of income that you can generate before you actually have to buy a professional version. MicroOLAP, yes, MicroOLAP and the others as well. The MicroOLAP is a very good little set of components. I've got them in here. Where are they? Delphi. This is the web page that I shared that had it. So here's MicroOLAP, and this is the other one, which is DevArt. So these are the MicroOLAP. Oh, you can't see that screen, can you? No. Okay, so you have no idea what I'm doing. Let me just go back to showing you my desktop. So the bit I was talking about when you couldn't see my screen, this is the web page that I linked to on my week 8 course, the curriculum. And if you go down there, there are links to everything that I mentioned. And one of them was MicroOLAP, which is this one. This will work in Community Edition. and DevArt is the other one. DevArt's slightly more expensive, but it's also very well respected. The people that I obviously bump into other Delphi programmers from time to time, despite being a reclusive guy sitting in my home office and programming and having dogs and birds as companions. I do go out, honestly, but mostly I'm at home writing code. But whenever you go to other Delphi houses, if they're doing MySQL, it's one of these two. Usually one of these two people that they're using. FireDAC is extremely popular as well, and some people absolutely rave about it. The only reason I don't use FireDAC is because when FireDAC first came out, I had some bad experiences with a very early version of it, and I needed to get something up and running that didn't have the issues that the early version of FireDAC had. And I'm talking years ago, and before it got included in the Delphi IDE. So I went to MicroOLAP and used their tools. Very great components. They again, I don't get any benefits from saying nice things about products, but the MicroOLAP components will definitely work and give you MySQL access, and you can do pretty much anything you want, and you don't need any extra layers or anything. It's a direct access. So if you had it working on your iPhone or Android, and they even talk about it in their web pages here, you can have your Android app connecting to a MySQL corporate app. And in fact, that is actually what we do with our applications. So it's all good. Let's go back to the questions. What other questions have we got? Are the micro... yes, this was another question that got asked, which is DevArt top notch, says Pete Edwards. Well, yeah, I prefer MicroOLAP, but yeah, DevArt are very well respected. DevArt also runs on MySQL. Yes, but the point I was making was both of those two are known to work on Android as well. So Mike is asking, are the MicroOLAP DAC components FireMonkey compatible? Yes, they are, and in fact, it's kind of it's sort of a weird question because that's not really. It's not really correct because they're not visual components. So they're not using FireMonkey, which is a rendering type system. But it is correct to say, are they cross-platform compatible? So do they work on iOS and Android? Yes, both of those do. MicroOLAP and DevArt do work on those, and they actually say so. Same with the reporting options that I went through. Some do, some don't. But in DevArt's case and MicroOLAP's case, they both work on cross-platform. Mike says, understood. Good. He's learning. Hooray! I have to say, during the course, I've learned a lot as well. Don't be put off by us being MVPs or being instructors on the Embarcadero course. We're working programmers. Most of the people that you've seen, doing the courses, with the possible exception of Marco Cantu, is actually the product manager for Delphi, I think, at Embarcadero, but most of us are developers first and foremost. We're not professional instructors. We've obviously got the bug inside us to pass on information, but all we are developers who really love Delphi as a product and think that it's the solution for most of our problems when we come to programming. We're not paid by Embarcadero to say good things about the products. As MVPs, we do get some side benefits. We get access to certain things. So if you go to the MVP page, they'll explain what those are. You can even apply or be suggested to be an MVP. There are a few of us around in the US, and there's lots around the world as well. Not just English-speaking ones, there's Italian-speaking and Portuguese-speaking. And there's a Delphi conference in Brazil at the moment, I think, and it's absolutely swamped with people. Sometimes it feels like you're the only Delphi programmer because you might not always bump into other Delphi programmers, but there were 3,000 plus people signed up to the academy, and the way the academy works, it's slightly difficult to tell which ones signed up to which courses, but there are plenty of people around the world using Delphi, and the release of the Embarcadero Delphi Community Edition has actually brought quite a few more people on. Because obviously there's a lower barrier to the cost of the product, and it's starting to make people realize, well, hang on, it's really easy to write some code in Delphi. Yes, it is. Somebody said the other day, I saw someone say, Oh, I like Delphi, but it's very wordy. And I'm thinking, have you ever written, C++ or something like that? My word. I mean, I would say that Delphi is the opposite of wordy in comparison to most other languages. ASP, for example, drives me crazy. I mean, the new stuff like in Razor and stuff like that is good, but Delphi is by far the most powerful language that definitely deserves the title of rapid application development. I will outstrip anybody in any other programming language to produce an app. I guarantee it, I'm faster than most of these other people. That's how I earn my money, by being very quick and reliable at producing applications. And the people that pay me rely on me, to be the smartest guy in the room. I'm not. I'm just the smartest guy at finding things that are smarter than I am and making them look like I'm the smartest guy in the room. So that's how it works. Right, so have we got any other questions? DevArt, I don't know, we went through most of those. I think that's probably all of it. You've listened to me talking for 40 odd minutes. If you've got any more questions, type them in the box. But if you haven't got any more questions, then I will probably call it a day. I hope you've enjoyed the Delphi Bootcamp. A lot of work went into this. If you think of every 30 minutes of video that we record, for the person recording that 30 minutes takes at least an hour and a half to do. And the reason is it takes 30 minutes to do the recording. It takes 30 minutes to review what you've recorded, and then 30 minutes either side to upload it to the Academy and all the rest of it. So each 30 minutes is Mike Z says, email me the info on how to create a basic component. I can code crazy things after that. No problem. I definitely will do. Feel free to email me, Mike, directly, ian.barker@gmail.com, and I will email you back. Yes, as I was saying, it takes quite a lot of time to create these videos, but we do it not because we are paid massive amounts of money or something like that to do it, but because we want other people to use the products, and we think that they're going to impart some information that helps encourage you. If you've got any questions, and it doesn't have to be about this course, please feel free to reach out to me personally. You can get to me on Gmail at ian.barker@gmail.com, or on Twitter. Follow me on Twitter, or directly link to me on Twitter. Or the other MVPs. We're all busy. We all code for a living, but the boot camp was put together by a bunch of us and Embarcadero to make sure that we would enthuse a new generation of Delphi programmers, so that it's not just a bunch of old geezers and old ladies sitting around keyboards, but newer faces coming into the crowd. And that does seem to have been successful. The launch of the community edition really gave a bump to the population of Delphi programmers, and things like Mike Z, you do not have to apologize for taking up anybody's time with asking questions. That's what this live stream is for. I would keep going until we've answered all the questions. So, we're here to help. We're here to help encourage people to program. So, I remember the very first day that I became a programmer. I'm going to give you this anecdote whilst you're all watching, so you can be bored. But I was 14 years old, and I was sitting in a physics lesson. Okay, and in those days, in the 1970s, when the teacher came in to the class, you would have to stand up and you say, "Good evening, good afternoon, sir," all the rest of it. And you called your teacher by their surname, their last name. You never called them by their first name, as is common in some schools now. And we all wore school uniform, and it was very formal. And I was sitting in the physics lesson, and in the left-hand corner, this is before the IBM PC was released, there was a clear plastic box, and in there was a bunch of wires and stuff like that, and it looked like something off of Doctor Who or Star Wars or something like that. And there was a screen attached to it, and we were not allowed to touch it. The only people that could touch it were in the top math set at school, the top mathematics classes at school, and they were all in the final year of school. And if you went near it, there was lots of shouting and punishments and things like that. So this thing was a magical perspex box sitting in the corner. And I'm sitting in class one day, and in through the door without knocking comes a guy with a tweed jacket on. That's kind of weird, even in the 70s, with leather elbow patches. It was a student. He was probably about 17 years old. And he walked in and he walked past the teacher. Bearing in mind, we had to be very formal with the teacher, and he went, "All right," like acknowledged him, and then went and sat down next to this plastic box. And he pressed the power button on the plastic box, and we're all like, "Oh, he's touching the computer." The only computer in the school made out of plastic with bits and bobs inside. And it took a little while to warm up, because these screens in those days still took a while to warm up. But it was a separate screen wired into this box. I don't know what the hardware was, but there you go. And after a couple of seconds, the screen came on, and we're all like, "Oh, mumble, I can't believe it. He's touching this box." And he sat there and he put his hands on the keyboard, which was like an old typewriter type keyboard, and he went tap, 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 slammed the return key, and all over the screen went tons and tons of letters of program code and directory listings and all the rest of it, all in text mode, all in a green on black screen. And I just looked at that and said, "That is the coolest thing I've ever seen. I want to do that." I was 14 years old. Oh, now my dog's going to bark. And that's exactly what I did. And here I am, in the 2018s as it is, 40 odd years later and 30 odd years later, and never looked back. Never regretted being a programmer for a living. If you are thinking about getting into coding and being paid to do it, I definitely recommend it. I never once do I sit there and think, why did I do this? I think it's shameful that most societies pay programmers so much, and people like midwives and nurses, so little. A midwife delivering a baby in the UK is frequently holding the life of the baby in their hands and the mother, and sometimes more than one life. And they're paid a tenth of what a programmer's paid. But that's the way society works, unfortunately. But coding, definitely, that's the thing to do. And I hope this week is, for those people that are new to Delphi, I hope it's trying to encourage you that Delphi is the most reliable system I know for programming. If you write a program in Delphi, it will keep on working forever. Now, programs I have out there have been going for 20 years and they're still going strong. And the new technologies coming along with FireMonkey and all the multi-platform stuff and things like that, it's the way to go. There are competing technologies, but I still believe that Delphi is your superpower, because it's definitely my superpower, and I've done it for a long time now and too lazy to do anything else. Anyway, if nobody else has got any other questions, then I'm probably going to end the stream. Thanks to those that ask questions, and when will iOS 12 be supported? Any word? Soon. You have to have the right version of Xcode and all the rest of it. Some things I can't talk about because they're probably being developed and all the rest of it. That's as much as I can say. There has been a release about a new version of Delphi coming along, but I need to check and see what that is, because that's information that I haven't necessarily been given at the moment. But there have been some announcements. I saw an email today. Pete said, "When are you back in the UK? Warm beer awaits you." You're in Mould, aren't you, Peter, if I remember correctly? Yes, warm beer sounds perfect. In fact, more importantly, Marmite flavour crisps. Oh, and fish and chips. Fish and chips in America is horrible, but there you go. Okay. Thanks, everybody. I'm going to end the stream now. And if you've got any questions, then feel free to email. Thanks for taking part.